Xbox only has one move left, and it's something that I want to discuss in this video. See, I was sitting playing games the other night, and it just came to me as I was flicking through the PlayStation store and seeing all the Xbox games on there, that really they've backed themselves into a corner business-wise, and that's kind of what I want to talk about, get your opinion on in the comments. With Sarah Bond coming out and saying, you know, we're talking about the ROG Ally handheld and how expensive it is, and talking about how, oh, next gen's going to be similarly priced, and basically saying it's going to be really damn expensive. It just got me thinking, like, what are they doing, right? They've always been kind of edged towards more powerful hardware, but at the moment they've seemed to have lost fans and community, and no one really knows what Xbox means anymore, and their games are popping up on all the other stores. And you know, I was sitting there looking at my PS5 Pro, which is more powerful, and you know, Xbox didn't come back with any kind of mid-gen refresh, and I was thinking the only way for Xbox to compete in the future, really, for the mainstream market, is to bring Game Pass to other consoles, to the Switch, to the PlayStation. And the thing is, now Game Pass is very, very expensive and people are unsubscribing, but I think this is their only move. And let me kind of dive into this a bit. See, the only kind of way for Xbox to really get their fans back is next generation. If they're going to put out a really expensive console, they really need to get Game Pass on the other consoles. I was, you know, as I was browsing the PlayStation Store, I was thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great? Like, basically, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could play all these Xbox games like Indiana Jones and Forza on the PlayStation, but with a subscription? Yeah, it's very expensive, and I know a lot of people aren't going to pay it, and I don't know if I'd pay it. But like Doom the Dark Ages, all this, yes, these games are available on PlayStation, but we have to buy them individually. And I think that if Game Pass was available on other consoles, particularly the PlayStation, the Xbox would see a resurgence in subscribers, and I think that, you know, maybe it'd keep them afloat in their eyes, at least, because they seem to be deterring people from buying their hardware. They're producing hardware, but it's not for the mainstream anymore. You know, the ROG Ally is at like $1,000. You know, it's like 2 Series X's. So it's kind of for the enthusiasts with a lot of money, and at the moment, you know, people don't have a lot of money. And I think that, you know, if we're looking towards next generation, and they will produce a console of some sort, but it'll be expensive, and I think that they're gonna find it hard for people to find people who will, after how they've acted this generation, really buy their next gen consoles and take up the kind of ecosystem. Because if you think back to 2020 time when the Series X and the PS5 first released, I bought a Series X straight away because at the time it was like, yeah, Game Pass, it's cheap, it's got all these games on. The Series X actually had a lot going for it over the PlayStation, and they were still very much on board with it. It was cool, but now at the sort of tail end of this generation, we don't see any of that. We kind of, you never see Phil Spencer, you hardly see Sarah Bond like talking to people about Xbox. They talk about the games and they talk about like the, you know, ROG Ally and stuff like that, but like if you caught Xbox, like, yeah, our next Xbox is going to be really cool, it's going to be for the fans. You never hear them talk about fans anymore, audience. And there's just so much bad news coming out. You know how they've laid off so many employees at Microsoft, and how they're expecting Xbox to have a 30% profit on all the studios it's bought. And I think like that's the only ace up their sleeve, is all of these studios that they've bought. You know, say Game Pass was available on PlayStation, I'd probably subscribe to play a bunch of the games I'd mentioned, because I haven't got around to playing them because they're not on PlayStation. Like Indiana Jones, I'd love to play, but I have a PS5 Pro, so why I have the Series X, but I'm not going to pay for a Game Pass subscription to play the inferior version of the game, because it's not as powerful as the PS5 Pro. But I'm also not going to pay like the expensive asking price for an Xbox game on a PlayStation, unless it's in a sale. But, you know, if you think about it, like, I think actually a lot of us would probably, if it was available, use Game Pass at least for a little while, maybe maybe a couple months or something, just to play the games we want to play if it was available on the PlayStation. Because there's also a lot of people who own PlayStations, and particularly Nintendo consoles, who have never had an Xbox, they're not interested in Xbox, but they would be interested in getting those games for a monthly fee. So the state of affairs are that the PlayStation and Nintendo communities are strong. Meanwhile, Xbox has pretty much destroyed itself and its identity and what it means to be, part of Team Green and get excited. I mean, do you remember when when Xbox used to do those kind of like fan events around the world? They did one in Mexico, they did one in London, and like they would get the fans together, and it was kind of like a little fan event like for the players. And now it's like there's just nothing. Like I think Major Nelson used to do those, and like Major Nelson's not there. There's just none of these key figures who you can point at and be like, oh, that guy. Like, like PlayStation has Mark Cerny, it had like a whole bunch of people. And I just think, I think really Xbox's only move is to actually put Game Pass on other consoles, because they've raised the price of Game Pass, they've raised the price of their hardware. Their hardware is pretty much inferior at this point, and it's kind of like, okay, well, where are we going from here? Either, they try to get more mainstream customers by getting Game Pass to more people, or we just say bye-bye Xbox, because I don't really see any other options. I mean, let me know in the comments if you what you see the future of Xbox, or if you think if there's anything I've missed, and whether you think they actually could do something else to recapture a lot of people. But at the moment they're pricing their things so expensive that it's only a small selection of the market who would want it. Because even if you have like $1,000 to blow on a ROG Ally, would you buy the ROG Ally, or would you buy something else, maybe a new TV? So, meanwhile, PlayStation and Nintendo communities have remained strong because they have exclusives, and it just kind of shows that traditional path of video games is still applicable, Like, people don't want all of the crazy stuff Xbox has been doing. People want to just, go out and purchase a game and, or have a subscription that's a reasonable price. I mean, at this point, the PlayStation's PlayStation Plus is actually a better deal than the expensive Game Pass. When you think, you don't get quite as many like first party games on day one, but you get an awful lot of really good games. You get online, you get benefits. If you have a PS Portal, which is pretty cheap, you can play your games there. So its next generation is looking crazy, and I think really in the next year or two Xbox only has one move left, and that's to put Game Pass on all the other consoles.